Hello, everyone. I'm Reaper PC, and welcome to the stream. As promised, we're doing a bit of just chatting this Friday. And today, for those that aren't in the know, happens to be the 30th birthday of that console that's right below me spinning, the Sega Saturn. And yes, that is spinning live. Yes, that's in here. Yes, that's the Saturn that's normally behind me. That spot is empty right now. I plucked it from there, put it up on a shelf by itself, and aimed a camera at it. Um, so yeah, that thing is 30 years old. 30 years ago today, that machine came out in Japan, where it did the best market wise. But before I get any further into that, let me catch up on the chat here. Lucky, you're first. Nikia second. Queen Mouse third. Hello. How are y'all doing? Points are out. Pyro, what's good with you? Jumbe, what's up? That's everybody in here right now. How are y'all doing? So, yeah, that console that didn't get much love in the United States is 30 years old. I remember reading about this thing in magazines. I remember reviews for games for it. I remember the VHS a friend of mine had before it came out with the promotional material for it. And now that thing is 30 years old. Time flies when you're playing video games, huh? Um, out of every, am I the only one here to have a Saturn, or have had? Has anyone else here had a Saturn? Wait a minute. Hold on. Uh, I never turned on the music. Do that on a different monitor, shall we? Please. Jumbo, they had, yes, they did have the better fighting games. I have Virtua Fighter 2 for it already. I plan on getting more. Um, Virtua Fighter 1 Remix. I think I might get all the Virtua Fighters except for 5 because that came out on a console I don't have, but Virtua Fighter 5 for PC has been announced. They're making a second edition with rollback netcode. So then I will have every version. It's great. So I have to get Virtua Fighter 1 Remix, Virtua Fighter 3 for the Dreamcast, then that Virtua Fighter 5, and I'll have the full set. And yes, I like Virtua Fighter more than Tekken. You can hate me if you want. That's my feeling on it. But yeah, what in the hell? No one said toes. When I told you I was putting up the second camera, it was for that. Wow, what's with the hate for the Sega Saturn? Why are we hating on the Sega Saturn? What did it do to you? Let me lower that. I don't know why she thought they would no. Let me know if the music's too loud, y'all. Yeah, but mainly due to a lot of misjudging of the market, bad marketing, corporate infighting. This console just got a raw deal. And there was still a lot of myths that people believe about it to this day. That one, it couldn't do transparencies. It could, you just needed to know how to program for it. This was a console that had dual processors and dual video display units, or what we now know as graphics cards, right? That wasn't a common thing back in the day. So not a lot of people knew to program for that. And what made it worse was some tasks could only be done by the second video processor. So if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know how to you wouldn't know how to get that effect. So transparencies was VDP2. If you don't know how to access VDP2, you couldn't do any transparencies. So people would just cheat and do mesh effects, which looked worse than an actual transparency. Sometimes water effects would look worse on multi-platform games between the PlayStation 1. That's what this competed against, and itself. When in actuality, if you knew how to use VDP2, it was capable of more water effects, with like, you know, the waving in the bottom of water and how light bends and refracts. The Saturn was capable of more of that natively than the PlayStation 1, but you needed to know how to access Video Display Processor 2. Like, there's little things like that that made me realize if Sega had their shit together, had a proper development kit, a proper documentation on how to do this, there wouldn't be so few games that utilize. There are games that utilize these effects that prove that, hey, it could do this. But by the time these games came out, it was already in the mindset of the majority of folks that the Saturn was weaker and couldn't do these things, which wasn't true. It could do a lot. Now, there are some places, don't get me wrong, I'm a PlayStation 1 owner, I was a PlayStation 1 kid, right? There are things that the PlayStation 1 could do better. One, it was easier to program for. Two, there's certain 3D things it had inherently that the Saturn couldn't do or didn't do as efficiently. But it was worse at 2D effects, and it was at worse at certain special effects. It was just weird. And I think somehow textures were handled better. That part, I think there was there was a shading technique the PlayStation could do on textures that I think the Saturn couldn't. So it's things like that. Same power. That was me. I didn't own a Saturn till this year. That's my first Saturn. Yeah, I was a Genesis kid. I think a lot of us might have been Genesis kids. Shout out to you if you were a Super Nintendo kid. Um, but Sega does what Nintendo don't. You know what I'm saying? Um, and just Sony's marketing, the early games, the footage. They had Ridge Racer footage out there at the time. Wipeout looking better. Previews of Square Enix or SquareSoft at the time. It is not going to be Nintendo exclusive for the first time in forever. And pictures of Final Fantasy VII, which at the time looked amazing, that are in works for the PlayStation 1. There were just all these things that just made the PlayStation look like the future. And the Saturn market, they were just all over the place, Sega. Between the 32X marketing and this. Sega and SNES to N64 to PS1 to PS2 to Xbox. So if you had an N64, how did you still end up getting a PlayStation 1? Because the N64 came out after the PS1. How did that time jump? Or did those two happen at the same time? And the PS2 and the original Xbox also were the same time. I am very confused by this timeline. I am very confused. Ah, okay. So same time. So I'm assuming the PS2 and the Xbox same time. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So what throws a lot of people off is this is actually what the fifth. Well, I can read it. Why am I trying to remember? Yeah, fifth generation console. It doesn't seem like the fifth when you think about it, but yeah. You got the Xbox and he got the PS2. I'm sure you spent a lot of time on that PS2. Original Xbox versus PS2. Woof. Think you got the short end of that stick. There's still only one game I want from the original Xbox. Only one. Steel Battalion. That's it. There's nothing else on the original Xbox that's even the slightest bit enticing. Sorry, Microsoft. You just sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. It was a Pentium 3 computer with a GeForce graphics chip. Charging people. You were charging people for an old gaming computer when that thing came out. You wasn't fool. Well, you wasn't fooling me. You weren't fooling anybody else into PC gaming at the time. We saw what that was. Like, wait, it's an old PC. Oh, they have the motherboard? Oh, jeez. Another common myth about the Saturn: this cartridge slot on it. And even I believed this myth at the time because I was a Sony kid. A lot of us that weren't Saturn owners believed for the longest that that cartridge slot, due to how it was shaped, could play Genesis games. It cannot. That is for accessories for this thing. You can either expand the RAM, much like N64 owners, you know about that. You put in a RAM cartridge, your games looks better. Um, you can put a modem in it, so it could play games online. Yes, back then Sega had online gaming. Actually, the Genesis had it as well. And guess what? You didn't have to pay a monthly fee for it to work. Well, not work on the console. You still need to pay your ISP, but that's still true either way. Another thing you'll see as this spins around. I wish the remote worked for the spinning display, but I didn't get it to work yet. You'll see there's a hatch to the left side of the back of the console. There's more accessories that can go in there, including a MPEG processor for videos. So if you put that in there, some games and video CDs will now play in the Saturn at higher quality. Well, if they have like video sequences, cinematics, whatever, they'll play at higher quality. Or if you pop a video CD in it, then now it works because it has the decoder. But it was very modular for its time, much like the Saturn was, not much like the Genesis was, where you could add the Sega CD and the 32X. So they thought of different things for this that was nice for the time. That was a very 90s thing. You don't really get that vibe much anymore. But yeah, this thing was basically just a cheapened version of one of their arcade boards. Also, folks don't know that it and the 32X share a lot of the same components. Of course, the 32X was the cheaper one. For those that don't know, 32X was a cartridge-based system you plugged into your Genesis to make it 32-bit. So if they were smart, a lot of the games they should have released later on for the 32X cheaper and make that kind of their halfway house for those that couldn't afford. This console was $400 in the 90s. That wasn't cheap. Where is it? Yeah, look at that. $800 in 2023 and account for inflation. Bruh. So when the PlayStation 1 dropped, that was another thing. It was $100 cheaper. But y'all have seen, I've been playing games on this. It's part of my retro collection now. You'll see me beating games on this. And I'm going to see if I can get any of the indie games now that this is years later. People know how to program for this thing now. And they pull off amazing stunts. Somebody went back and recreated Tomb Raider for the Saturn. No, sorry, Tomb Raider 1 was out on the Saturn. I take that back. They're now porting it to the 32X. I'm remembering correctly. And I think Tomb Raider for the Saturn actually looks slightly better than the PlayStation 1 in some places. Basically anywhere that had water. So I might actually have to try that live. What was the... Resident Evil looked worse on this than the PlayStation. Resident Evil 2 got canceled, never came out for it. Apparently, the rumor was Resident Evil 2 was going to force it to use the RAM cartridge. Yo, Bifu, what's up with you? But yeah, if just to think back, if they had released proper documentation on what each of the visual display processors did, they probably would have been in a much better place. X-Men versus Street Fighter and quite a few others used the RAM card. Yeah. A lot of the SNK fighters did. Marvel versus Capcom. Was Marvel versus Capcom 1 or 2? I think 2 used it. Street Fighter Alpha 3 used it, or 03. What else? There was one SNK fighter had its own dedicated 2 was on the Dreamcast. Okay, I'm remembering correctly. So 1 definitely needed it then. One of the SNK games had its own dedicated RAM cartridge. So that dedicated RAM cartridge had assets for that game on it. Like you couldn't just use it like a regular RAM card, which was weird. Thankfully, SNK went to regular RAM cartridges afterwards. There we go, Jumbe. Yes. The rest of them just use a regular general purpose RAM card because it made no sense. Like you had to have the cart for that game. There was like 3 games for the Saturn that way. And there were 2 different RAM cards. There was the 2 meg and the 4 meg. And I think they were megabit, not megabyte, if I remember correctly. Big Balls, what's good with you? And to further dispel that the PlayStation was just significantly better than it hardware-wise, other than sales, because this only sold 9.26 million units, and I think the PlayStation 1 is in the hundreds of millions. We want the PlayStation 1. Thank you. All right, so hardware, is that listed here? No, beefy hardware doesn't always cut it. Like, you could have all the hardware in the world. If no one knows how to use it, I mean, we have a more modern example, right? The PlayStation 3 was a more modern example. Like, Sony didn't learn their lesson of why the Saturn failed, and they repeated their mistake. So, a lot of people don't realize this. When the PlayStation 3 came out, we were just like, we're on the cusp of multi-core CPUs for home use, which means outside of enterprise level or military applications, there weren't many dual quad. Like, that wasn't a thing. You could have 2 individual CPUs in a server, but like a dual core unit, that wasn't a thing that was common yet. And then they released this, what was it, 7-core monster, with some of the cores being specialized, much like there were video processors that were specialized in the Saturn. And if you don't document what everything does, so now you had the PlayStation 3 looking worse than the Xbox 360 for like the first 2 years because no one knew how to freaking program for it properly. All these specialized co-processors. The triple general purpose processor in the 360 was easier for them to wrap their heads around. And it helped that I think those Core 2 was what year? Core 2 Duo. What was that? Conroe architecture, right? 2006. My memory could be off. PlayStation 3 release date to the same year. So it's the same year. So no one was really. So before that, you had the Pentium 4 Duo, which was a kludge, and not many people made anything that utilized it. So it wasn't popular mythos. Most things didn't require it, and games sure as hell weren't programming that way. Yeah, no one wanted. So it was multi-core as general was in its infancy. So people could easier wrap their head around the 360. It was Windows API, so if you know how to program for Windows, you could do that. And it was only 3 cores. The PlayStation was these 7, very specialized too. They weren't, so you'd have to direct certain things at certain cores. So they just kind of, a lot of people just forced what they could for general. Yes, Autumn, it's tech. It's not going to stay that way, though. We're going to go into links. At the time, so Sony made this mistake with the PlayStation 3, and it took, I want to say, and I'm going off memory, I had the PS3 with the RSX GPU and the RSX from Accurate. This guy. So I'd say for the first 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, your brother's having an issue with this PC. Oh boy, what'd he break? Welcome to the 30th anniversary of the Saturn stream, Autumn. So for 2.5 years, games look worse. Sony, however, had more marketing budget. They had more credit, so they were able to weather the storm a lot better than Sega was. And eventually, with experience and proper documentation, the tides turned. Then they had the price drop, and the rest is history. The PS3 caught up. That was the only generation Microsoft's Xbox really sold, and at near the end of that generation, the PS3 had reclaimed the lead, even by a little bit, in the market. But it showed that even having the stronger console, the Blu-ray player, all of that, and being more expensive, it hurt. And that's the mistake the Saturn made against the PlayStation. So look at it. It's one CPU at 33.86 megahertz. The Saturn, 228.6 megahertz CPUs. So it's dual processing. Video memory. 2 megabits on either. Of general purpose, half a meg more video RAM, which is actually a big deal back then. Sound had its own RAM, and then the expandable RAM cartridge, and then the 2 video processors, and a Yamaha sound chip, right? They really just hurt themselves there. They had a better on paper unit, but no one knew how to use the damn thing. It's funny, me and my people was talking about how 360 was when. So it wasn't that the 360 was when Microsoft went downhill. The 360 was actually a good selling point for them, right? Because the Xbox OG barely sold. I can't even call it the Xbox One because of their garbage marketing. Where Microsoft started to go downhill really was not understanding their audience, and just, if you notice, Microsoft makes a lot of choices that seem like they only talk to one another. It's very insular. They do this with Office. They do this with Windows. So that was then the Games for Windows Live initiative was then, and they ruined the way people on PC experienced that. They weren't listening to their market there either. They made a lot of missteps. It really wasn't the 360's fault, but a lot, and I think that was during the Steve Ballmer administration of Microsoft, a lot went sideways there. A lot of it. It took a few years for people to move PS3 because the only thing stopping them, and let's be real, was the cost of it. Once the Slim came out and the price dropped, Then it then the marketing came out. Oh, now it's the cheapest Blu-ray player out, and it's the cheapest. We know DVDs help sell the PS2, so now that was a plus. Um, then they had God of War was out already. Gran Turismo was out. How am I forgetting Sony exclusives all of a sudden? Um, they had visually stunning games. What was the one where it's that kid? He was slaying monsters. I forget the name of it. There were a bunch of like hit Sony titles that started landing back to back to back, and they look good because now people knew how to work on it. And the rest is history. 600 on release was crazy. Yes, that was a problem. Okay, the 50 gig hard drive wasn't the biggest thing back then, right? That didn't seem like a bad deal back then. You have a pic with Kaz? Nice. Did he sign that picture? Oh no, if you took it digitally, there's probably no way unless you had a Polaroid. My brother's getting this error message. System thread exemption not handled. Then it goes to blue screen and restarts. It started after. Oh. Okay. Chances are, Autumn, a couple things can happen there. If that's Windows 11, the trusted platform module is screaming its head off because it's a different motherboard. If it's not Windows 11 and it's Windows 10, a lot of that is probably because there's a difference probably of a motherboard driver someplace. So the machine's trying to boot. Hey, I'm not exactly the same. I don't have a driver for this. Crash, restart. Based on that description, those are the first two things that come to mind. He was smoking a cig and PS Brass was like, don't post it. Yeah, blue screen, that's enough fun. Feel like it was the tail end due to strategy. It was a lot. Microsoft didn't know what they're doing, and then they went and doubled down because Sony had all this media clout. Xbox One, they're like, all right, we're gonna attack media too. It's a media box with the TV guide overlay and everything. Those are lessons they learned from Windows Media Player having TV integration that everyone loved at the time, right? But that was already getting old on Windows. They decided to incorporate that to their new Xbox when everyone was starting to go streaming. And then you dedicate resources to the media aspect that you can't touch as a game dev. Anybody can go back and look at Xbox One. Parts of its resources were cut up. Media was always running, so that had its own resources. The main menu and organization had its own resources. Then the games ran its own resources. They ran essentially 3 virtual machines at once on this hardware and made it seem worse for third-party devs, which is why some games seem better on the competition.
The Reaper.
Mifu, thank you for the follow. You've been here before multiple times. How's that? You know what? I'm not going to try to think about that. So that was a bad move. And in hindsight, you hear people say Xbox gambled and lost on the wrong generation, which was the Xbox One, because that's when people started collecting a digital media library that they wanted to roll forward. And if you did that already on PlayStation 4, you're now going to do that again on PlayStation 5 and so on and so forth. No one's going to want to reset. When the PS Plus was free for all, yeah. I think Game Pass is good, but it's not going to make people buy an Xbox. That is very true. Yes, that is true. A lot of that is people who are already on Xbox are now using it either on Xbox and using it on PC, or PC folks that don't have a huge Steam library that will now get Game Pass on PC. But once they start realizing things are on Steam and they start seeing Steam sales or GOG sales, or God help them if they have Amazon Prime, who just gives away free games every month, eventually they're not going to see the reason to keep up with Xbox Live subscription. Like, they've ended up on this downward spiral where they're fighting just to retain which is something Sega did. It was the cheapest Blu-ray player, 60 gig. Okay. Yes, it was a 60 gig drive. DJ Clue, nice. No, Microsoft still hasn't learned because they, again, if you look at their decisions, a lot of it seems like they just talk to each other and not paying attention to their audience. Because now they were saying what? Oh, our exclusives will stay our exclusives. Indiana Jones is supposed to be exclusive. It's only 1 year exclusive to anything Microsoft, and then it's coming out on the PlayStation a year later. Uh, I, Zune and Microsoft phones. Microsoft phones was again them not listening, right? They bought Nokia. They got Nokia's audience, who at the time was the largest cell phone manufacturer, and lost the whole cell phone market in a couple of years. Do you know how back-assed you have to be to lose an entire entrenched market? Instead of keeping the Nokia name and then Microsoft the sub-brand, no, it's Microsoft. It's got to have Microsoft everything. They stripped the Nokia name off everything. Everything said Microsoft, said Windows Phone. And now you've lost the name that people attach to for their mobile devices. You know who has good brand marketing? Apple. Guess who you gave up the market to in North America? You don't understand your own market. And I'm saying that as an Android person. I saw it, like I watched them screw that up. I was also a Nokia person and watched them screw that up. And yes, I have one of them on hand. Say hello to my Nokia N97. Right? Full keyboard, touchscreen, had a little stylus pen, micro SD card slot, camera that had its own dust cover. You open the dust cover, boom, activates the camera. Great hardware. Software needed some help. Microsoft should have helped in that regard. All they had to do was keep the Nokia logo and on the back, Nokia powered by Microsoft. So your brand still gets out there. Nah, they just ditched the whole Nokia name and lost all their brand loyalty. Zune had its own fans. They screwed that up too. Okay, any suggestion for how you can fix it? Or you, if you're trying to fix that on your own, that needs to be booted into safe mode, and you need to find the drivers it's missing. It's probably Twitch being Twitch. I believe it. Halo will be on PlayStation. I believe it. Samsung or a real Android phone. You know I ain't got no Samsung. Come on. That's I have here a Sony Xperia Pro I, which I wish I'd get the new Pro out already because they stopped updating this one, and still no one's cameras touch the cameras in this thing if you're doing manual settings. That HTC, that wasn't manufactured by HTC. Thank you very much. Yeah, I didn't know PlayStation had a phone connection cable. That's interesting. I'll see if that was compatible with the US unit. A photo of the only known SNES-based PlayStation prototype? No, the only functional one. But yes, that's what where Nintendo created the monster that became the Sony PlayStation, because they ditched them on this project last minute. Sony's like, but we made all this stuff. We did all the stuff. What are we gonna do with all this stuff? No, I had a PS2. The PS2 was my last PlayStation. Um, so for a lot, especially in the 3D era, right? In the 3D era, so I started PC gaming myself. I'm not talking about at a friend's house or school, whatever. Myself, my own PC gaming experience started on a Windows 95 machine with an Intel 486 processor. Yes, pre-Pentium, right? Um, and that's when I started to see that you started to experience games like Doom and stuff, which had already been out, but this is when I'm experiencing it. And then I got a Windows 98 machine, and then that's when Grand Theft Auto 1 came out during that era. And it was uncensored, unaltered on PC. And I'm like, yo, this is like that Genesis vibe, like when Genesis had all the blood and gore compared to SNES. So I started to check out more and more games, Quake games, Need for Speed games. I noticed Need for Speed games look better on my PC. I ended up getting a Voodoo 3. I still have my PlayStation, but it was starting to look real even, right? But even as a kid, I realized it's more expensive this way. But every year, graphics cards and processors were getting exponentially better, and in some cases getting cheaper. And I realized by the time the PS2 rolled around, at the time, at its drop, it was the cheapest way to get a good looking game, right? But I knew that it wasn't massively better than at this time my long in the tooth Windows 98 machine with an overclocked Voodoo 3. But it did look better. And I knew an upgrade to that would be a whole new PC, which is expensive, versus just the cost of a PS2. So I ended up with the PS2 and a few games, only a handful. And then I started working, I made some money, and I started slowly building this PC. And by the time it was done, everything I played on that looked better than my PlayStation 2. And that was the end of it. PS3 came out, the price value proposition was gone because, again, we just discussed it was $600. And I'm like, I might as well just upgrade my PC for that cost and play my games looking better. And the rest is history. Yes, the modem and LAN attachment that's slapped onto the back of the PlayStation 2. I don't have a PlayStation 2 in here right now. But for those that had the OG PS2, on the back there was a hard drive section because it's a Sony Computer Entertainment. All the PlayStations could be turned into a computer, so the hard drive could go in there for either the computer attachment or for MMOs. They use that, but they're also exposed an interface port for attaching things like a LAN adapter or a modem, and it was chunky. It was chunky. Your little brother's there. Yeah. If that's a Windows 10 machine, um, yeah, that's gonna be a prob. It's not gonna be too much of a problem if it's Windows 10. It's probably drivers. If it's Windows 11 and it's complaining about the TPM chip being different, that might be a reinstall. Yes, it was Final Fantasy 11. That was the MMO that needed that drive. Um, but yeah, online Sega Netlink. See, this is look at the size of the Netlink adapter. It wasn't small either. Um, Let me see this. That is they don't show it. They just show the service. Okay. But yeah, what I'm glad to see now is right, you have companies like VGN Soft making games for these older consoles. Let me see what they have now. They have Dreamcast. They don't have any Saturn listed right now. But yeah, there's an entire selection. VMU replacement cases and just games. Newly ARM 7, y'all have seen me play that here. Games and ports coming to these older consoles. It was VGN Soft and Limited Run Games. These are the first two that come to mind, but there are other companies doing this. PC and Retro, and boom, look, new reprints of Arrow the Acrobat are coming out. $60, so I'm not sure how much I'd want to do that for 60, but battle tanks for the N64, like people are bringing things back for these things, and I'm happy to see that because these things still run. GameSpy. Yes, remember the wild west of game matching when it wasn't centralized. Um, but yeah, shout out to the Saturn being 30 and still having a fan base. And now that retro's in, people are like rediscovering it again. And games for this thing have shot up through the roof. Z, I never did. I use Z-Link? I don't think I use Z-Link. I don't recall using Z-Link. Let me paraphrase. I don't recall using Z-Link. Definitely use GameSpy. But yeah, some games for this console now are hundreds and probably heading up to thousands of dollars. Wow. An app on PS3 allowed you to play PSP games with friends. Remember when Steam briefly had a link between the PlayStation 3 accounts or PSN accounts and Steam, so you could play Team Fortress 2 with PC users? They had that. What? Oh, I had a comment there. Jeez, that is sad. I can't type. Not the PSP right next to you. All right, so let's see. Panzer Dragoon. I should put Saga because that's the expensive one, right? Yeah, there goes Saga. $983. $800. Nintendo Switch Edition, nobody cares. Xbox Edition, nobody cares. Original Panzer Dragoon 1, $80. Not bad. You think the UMD was a terrible idea? I think at the time, it was the best compromise between the amount of storage and price, because it was essentially the same tech as their mini disc, just in a different case. It was mini disc tech. But let's see, what was the storage capacity of a UMD? Sony. 1.8 gigs of data on that. Okay, yeah. You are not getting 1.8 gigs. You're not even getting 1 gig of flash storage for a decent price back then. You know what's funny? You say you break it, but I was at LI Retro with Data's Venom, and he had a book of UMDs. He just cracked open all of pristine because he wanted to get a new old PSP there. So he would try them on the spot in front of these people. And you see the shock on their faces when he broke open the case and they're just all in these hard shells. So he knew how to keep them. And Date isn't exactly a delicate individual, but he treats his consoles with kitten gloves. Let's see, what was in it? MPEG 4 AVC, A-Track 3 Plus. They were forcing that A-Track format for so long. 480p. Okay. 1,500 films were released on the UMD. Yeah, 19 years ago. So 2004. Flash memory. 2004. That was still compact flash disc. Jeez. That's the cost of it. Okay, every popular media format out there, X-rated content ends up on. Let's be real. Bifu, that it's memory stick duo. Wait. I have a small container of flash memory here. Keep in mind, I use Sony phones. There's the memory stick duo to mini memory stick adapter. And that was made by SanDisk, so it wasn't even an official Sony one. Do I have any memory sticks in here, or do I have to find an old Sony Ericsson and rip it out of it? Yeah, it's probably still sitting in a Sony Ericsson phone. It's not in here. Laserdisc? You mean this thing? The guy. Let me see. Cost benefit. So 2000. They don't have. Let's see how good searches are. Largest flash memory available in 2004. 8 GB was the largest, and it would probably be stupidly expensive. So yeah, no, UMD was needed. They needed a small optical disc format. It was absolutely necessary. Um, was the casing perhaps not ideal? Maybe, but they needed it. Dual layer made it 1.8 gigs. Single layer was 900. AES 128-bit encryption. Yeah, that's been cracked. Um, oh, there's supposed to be a shutter on it eventually, like a floppy disk. And they're going to make it slot loading. They're probably going to make a very thin PSP after that. Okay. Yeah, but for anybody who wants Panzer Dragoon Saga, right? The most expensive one, get the Japanese one, which is more prevalent. And just yes, it's an RPG with Japanese all over the screen. We have Google Translate on all our phones now. Just put it in Google Translate mode, just aim it at the screen. Like after you're done reading the text, you're going off to fight anyway. Panzer Dragoon 2, that's the one for those of you who follow my IG. That's the one you saw me restore back to like new condition for Dade, because the lot he got it in, the case was damaged. The disc was fine, but the case was damaged. He has manual, he has the insert. So I have brand new long boxes. I just swapped that out for him. It's like new now, manual and everything included. So he should be able to command that $100 if he wanted to. A Panzer Dragoon 2 flag is $30. There was a flag? Is it bad that part of my nerd brain is like, oh, you could hang a Panzer Dragoon flag behind you? All right. Wait, what 4 games are in this? Yo, if I end up buying something here, I'm gonna be mad. Is it just me, or does this look at the inserts? This looks like somebody printed these off a really bad laser jet. That or your phone camera sucks. These look like bootlegs. Hold on. Full screen these pictures. This is either really compressed or really fake. It's hard to tell. I remember Scud advertisements. Holy crap. See the hash lines in the printing? These manuals look like reproductions, but that could also be artifacting from a really shitty camera. Not the circular scratch. That's the worst thing to have on these. Assuming this isn't a burnt disc. Now, wait a minute. This does have the foam insert. These might be legit. You might just have a really shitty camera. No, but see, look at these lines here and this. This looks like a reprint. This stuff looks reprinted. Nah. My sixth sense is screaming on this one. I could be wrong, but that looks like somebody selling reproductions. And not good reproductions either. Oh, somebody has Guardian Heroes. Am I the only one seeing this? Where these look like repros? Alright, so to give y'all an idea of what a clean Saturn game looks like, right? And why these look so false to me. So, you see how you don't see the lines in the printing on this? You're not supposed to, it's supposed to be seamless. That looks like inkjet print patterns. Not my money, not doing it. See, this looks official. This one looks official. Be careful out there when buying retro games, because there are a lot of people with reproductions. What's with this white line around the edge on the back art, though? Suddenly that got sus. Right there. Why didn't that print all the way to the edge? Ah, you broke the case. That's no big deal. Okay, let me get out of here. So yeah, that's let's see, how much is a Saturn worth now? $80 for this Saturn. Comes with the Interact memory card and Lost World Jurassic Park. Why do you say see description? What happened? Controller, game, memory card. No cords or cables, may not work, no way to test it. $160 for a tested one, $85 for this Japanese one. $75.50. I think this is a Japanese one as well. Yeah, the Saturns aren't expensive, especially the Japanese ones, because there's millions of them. And this sucker looks aged. That plastic has yellowed. All right, let me get out of this before I buy something. Yeah, so that's it for the Saturn stuff. So I did promise y'all, right? That I would do an extended session of links. We're about an hour in. I think I'm gonna go right on into the link section. The African version of the Sega Saturn. I don't think they had an exclusive version. There's only 3 major regions of those consoles. So they're either using the European release one or the Japanese release, which I doubt. You know what? You said that joking, but let's see if that's a statistic. Hold on. By region. Huh. Xbox kind of dominates South Africa. Go figure. Do they list? So they list Japan, China, South Korea, North America, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Europe, Western Europe, France, Germany by itself, Spain, UK, Australia. South Africa gets its own listing, but only South Africa. Interesting. I wonder what spec they consider that. Hold on, let's see. Where's Sega in this list? Saturn sold. Wait, if they only sold 9 point something million units and 5.8 million of them were in Japan. Damn. Oh, Sega. How you dropped the ball. Really, big boss? Really? He knew the way. I can't. Somebody come get this man. But again, that was the 30th anniversary of that spinning box right below me here.
It would have been nice to see toes.
And that's gonna end up on YouTube. No, it would not have been nice. That was never the goal. Um, when are we gonna get to the next Saturn game? So I have to finish the Dreamcast game. That's first. Um, I do have Virtua Fighter 2, Die Hard Arcade, Daytona USA, and Virtua Cop. So maybe one of those on the Saturn. I also have Echo the Dolphin for Sega CD to consider. And for those wondering, this is also going to be, because based on the Japanese release dates, this December is the 30th anniversary of the PlayStation 1. So hopefully I have that in my setup. So I have something similar to that, except straight vertical, instead of side by side, like how that one is, to the right of my setup here. So that's actually what the Saturn is on top of. It's on top of that. Hopefully I'll have. I'm still organizing my PlayStation stuff to bring it in. Some of you who've seen my IG will have seen that I got my Time Crisis set up all completed for the PlayStation 1 again. So bits and pieces of the retro vibe are coming together. I now have to put that back in my setup. And what do y'all think of my spinning carousel, which is probably going to get featured more often on the unboxing since I'm now doing that? That will probably show up there more often. But yeah, the Saturn. And his birthday is officially over in the Eastern time zone because it is now the 23rd. And it was November 22nd in Japan when it released. Oh, and this is a remote for that display, which for some reason hasn't worked yet. I don't think any of these batteries I've tried are good. That or I got a dead remote. We'll see. Let me put the volume back down on this. Oh, all the Saturn stuff we were discussing. Oh, this is something I need to get the American version. Well, any version of the 3D controller for Nights into Dreams. That looks like such an oddball controller, but I want to get that authentic feel of playing that. I do have Nights into Dreams on PC. I could just play the game there, but there's something about playing that the way it was designed to be played initially. Super Metroid? Yeah, I mean, if it came out in 94, yeah. Who do we have on? Push Plays on. Retro Drew is on. Didn't I raid Retro Drew recently? I did. Retro Recap is on. I think I might look. If I don't see... Jolty J is on. Tiger Prime is on. I don't think I've ever rated Tiger Prime. Hey, Frightless, what's good with you? I might drop us off by Tiger Prime, but let me see. Let me search Sega Saturn. Somebody else is celebrating the Sega Saturn. There's a few people celebrating the Sega Saturn. Okay. To buy keys from, are we talking about for Windows or are we talking about for video games? Video games. I probably recommended, I don't remember the exact conversation, but there's two I can recommend off the top of my head. cdkeys.com and Green Man Gaming. Off the top of my head. Let me make sure this individual isn't followers only. Lucky, thank you very much for the 100 biddies. If anybody else knows of a reputable key place, reputable, not shady where things get revoked, you can recommend to Frightless right now.
CD Keys. That's all I know.
CD Keys, yeah. CD Keys is definitely a good one. They've been around forever. Green Man Gaming, of once or twice I've gotten stuff from them. All right, so I don't follow this person, and it lets me type. All right, so we're going to rate on somebody new. They're currently playing Pocket Fighter, hopefully on the Saturn. Yes, probably on the Saturn. That looks like Saturn. G2A? If that's a site, N2, is it not a... It better not be a shady site.
Not that.
Boss. G2A? Oh, okay. So G2A is another suggestion from N2. Boss, contact Big Boss if you follow that advice and your machine gets hosed.
Nah, we don't condone that usage.
Also, if you're a Twitch Prime user, not Twitch Prime, if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, check Twitch's notifications. A lot of games go free there that sometimes cost money.
I got what is that game Dade played?
Plague's Tale. Yep, that was free.
Yeah.
That was free recently. Tomb Raider series was free recently. So look through that list. Make sure your Amazon and your Twitch accounts are kind of same email address. And there's a lot on there. You want to play Overcooked? You have the patience for Overcooked? I never got it. As far as
I have Overcooked, but I don't have the fucking patience for that shit.
Oh, Lucky would be cussing a lot. You would need to be live, Lucky, for that one.
No.
Guardians of the Galaxy is free. N2. N2.
Yeah, it is. It's on Epic, right? Or is it on
Probably.
GOG?
It's on Prime right now for free.
Yeah.
Uh, no, thank you to that one. Overcooked is free through GOG. I like GOG. I'm claiming it right now. Get game. No DRM on that one.
I have the Overcooked too.
You have Overcooked 2 or Overcooked?
Over.
But it's free. So anybody doesn't have Overcooked, redeem it. A GOG code. All right. But we are heading to. All right. We have Dave Tona. Oh, Dave Tona doesn't have a cam. All right. We're gonna head to Tuxedo Mass 23. Keep in mind, I'm going off the strength of the fact that Happy Birthday Sega Saturn's in the name. I've never been here before. Clearly a retro streamer, so let's introduce ourselves to somebody new. And also a retro streamer. As always, everyone, enjoy your time online. Enjoy your games. Don't take your stuff too seriously. Don't let it disturb your peace. And never forget to quarter up. I'm Reaper PC. And this is it for the week, I think. I don't think I'll be streaming for the rest of the week. Shout out to everybody in the credits. Let's see what we have in store with this new guy. Tuxedo Mass 23. Let's head out now. Tuxedo Mass raids are on. And hopefully this is a good one. Enjoy the song at the end. Thank y'all for the combos. Thank y'all for everything that, as far as bits and contributions, or just joking around. And try not to break anything. Don't be like Lucky.
Yeah, like you did.